Genshin starter characters. We're all familiar with them by this stage. Whether you're a new player or a veteran, you most definitely have acquainted yourself with this cast. Yet, they have one major pressing issue. Why oh why in the name of Barbatos are they not available on limited banners? Why are their constellations gatekept in the Starglitter shop? I have a few reasons as to why I think this makes no sense. So today, I thought it would be fun to make a case as to why the starter characters should be allowed on the limited banners, because it simply makes no sense to keep them locked up in Starglitter jail. My name is Juice, and let's get into it. Okay, so why do I think that this is all so strange? Simple, it's because of something I noticed. Would you all agree with me when I say that Kaya is pretty much on the same value level as Chongyan and Rosaria, perhaps being a little worse or better than those two depending on your own personal opinions? Both Chongyan and Rosaria are able to be pulled on limited banners. Granted, they don't appear super often, but you can still pick them up every now and then. Both have pretty decent constellation lineups as well, which work well to improve their kit, and in Rosaria's case makes her pretty great physical support at C6 as well. Kaya also has good constellations. Kaya also has viable reasons as to why you'd want to use him in reverse melt or freeze. People have praised his C2 constantly, and I can see why, since it'd be pretty good in Venti Shillabysses with a bunch of trash mobs, or the more AoE heavy Imaginarium theater that has you killing mobs quickly all the time. Yet, why is his C2 so inaccessible? Why does Hoyoverse lock it behind the Starglitter store? I'd say that his C1 and C2 are equally as good as Rosaria's first two cons and Chongyan's first two cons. Not to mention that his C6 is a pretty nice damage increase for the guy, considering that it literally adds an extra icicle to his burst, while also reducing his ER requirements, allowing you to build more offensive stats on him. I'm not trying to sell Kaya as a groundbreaking unit right now, because he's not, he's just fine. He's Rosaria and Chongyan tier while having an incredibly good C6 for his own kit that really improves his performance. And that is my problem. Hoyoverse doesn't think that starter characters are good enough or valuable enough to be put on limited banners to acquire copies. I believe their mindset is perhaps that getting starter character constellations is lame. After all, if you're a new player that gets a copy of a free character instead of a new 4-star, wouldn't you feel a little annoyed? Yet, if Hoyoverse's goal is to preserve people's sanity, then that makes no sense, because as I've already stated, Kaya's constellations are literally good for him. They don't make him crazy, but I can realistically see somebody wanting them. Meanwhile, we can pull constellations for somebody like Kaveh. And while his constellations do help improve his abysmal kit by quite a bit, Kaveh is still actively reducing the DPS that you do in any Bloom team because of how he works against transformative reactions. Kaveh literally limits Bloom cores, applies Dendro as fast as Jing Yuan clears MOC, and yet is still somehow pullable on limited banners. Okay, to be fair, Kaveh was gone for literally 440 days in jail, but I think that was more related to how he was literally deleting people's game files and then got sent to court to receive his 0 banner appearances for over a year prison sentence. But you get the idea. Bad 4-star characters have always been a thing. So pulling for bad constellations is nothing new. Remember when Kuki Shinobu first came out? She sucked. She got buffed incredibly hard into an impressive hyperbloomer in Sumeru, but on release, she just sucked. No other way around it. Xinyan got buffed with Mualani's release because she's a workable pyro option with her, yet for the longest time she was garbage, and to be honest, most people aren't going to be using her with Mualani anyway unless they specifically like Xinyan, so she's still not insane because she has one new team. Yet we've been able to pull constellations for her for ages at this point. What I'm trying to get across is this. Hoyoverse not putting starter characters on limited banners to avoid disappointment makes no sense, when we've always been able to pull for 4-stars out of worse constellations and have overall worse kits than the starter characters. The disappointment factor only really applies to new players who get an extra copy of Lisa or something during their first 10 pull. Sure, they'd be delighted to find out how rare that actually is later on, or they'd stay disappointed because it's not what they wanted. Rare or not, I think they'd still be kind of upset either way. This extremity isn't a solution to that. It also makes no sense to hold them to such a level of exclusivity, because it's not like the starter 4-star characters are that good. Like, you're telling me that we're gatekeeping the starter characters when Xingqiu, Bennett, Fischl, and Ga Ming are usually consistently available on banners? Of course, I don't think those characters should be gatekept. Not at all. That is not my point right now. My opinion is that none of these 4-star copies should be gatekept, because these starters aren't so horrible as to never have them on banners, but their C1s to 6s aren't so insanely broken to the point where releasing them to the public would be hazardous. Like, most of the starter 4-stars are equal to some of a regularly available 4-star in terms of meta value. Kaya, as I've already covered in detail, is cool for reverse melt and freeze. He is equal to, if not better or worse than Rosaria and Chongyun with a great C2 and C6. Lisa is a nice free-to-play Electro, but I can realistically see somebody using if they need a cheap Dendro option, who can also do some good work in Eula teams. Her burst is also valuable thanks to the Def Shred. Her C2 has a wonderful quality of life which complements her C1 that wants her skill to be held for cheaper ER requirements, and that's important because Lisa has high ER recs and her burst is quite important as I've already mentioned. This also makes it easier to use TDDS on her, which is also good in Eula teams, with the rest of her Constellation lineup focusing in on her own damage. Great QOL stuff. Amber is the worst of the three, but once you get C2, you can play her infamous meld team if you're the type who wants to deny the meta in style. Quote unquote in style meaning still 36 starring the Abyss. Her C6 also has some buffing qualities, which is nice if you use Amber as a pure elegy bot, and while Amber is never going to be best in slot anywhere at C6, there are still worse 4-star characters than her, and she is definitely a lot more serviceable at C6, which is a shame because so many people can't access it. It's also strange that you can't get constellations for the starting free units, but you can for all other starter characters that Genshin gives out. Barbara, nice C2 for Mono Hydro and Hydro DPS nuke showcases. Since she's a nice Farina driver, she has her place. Yet I don't think everybody's going out of their way trying to get their Barbara to C6. Xiangling, her C4 is an absolute Archon send, while also having a great buffing base C6. We all know that Xiangling is one of the strongest 4-star characters in the game, and her reign has been literally more eternal than the Raiden Shoguns. We, thankfully, can pull for her constellations on banners. Kole, very nice in Nilou Bloom teams, otherwise she's whatever in other comps because DMC's Dendro application is a lot larger. We can still pull constellations for her. Lynette, her C2 makes her pretty nice in aggravate comps, otherwise she's pretty much just a fine unit. Her C6 actually allows for some funny Animo DPS shenanigans for those interested. We can pull for her constellations. Okay, but the really interesting one to me is Kachina. You can make the argument with the others that you don't get them in the same way as Kaya, Lisa, and Amber. You claim them from the events menu, but you obtain Kachina in the same way that you obtain those first free, yet we can still pull for her constellations. I'm glad that's so, because Kachina C1 is nice for Navia teams, her C2 is good for her general uptime, and C4 is nice for both Ito and Shiori comps. Yet because you obtain her in the same way as the other three, they should also be obtainable on limited banners. And as I've already covered, their constellations really improve them. Might I add that not everyone wants to spend their glitter on starter character constellations. Yes, I know a good chunk of players do, but I also know that a good chunk of players prefer to buy pulls of their glitter. Think of it like this. Arlecchino's banner is about to end, and you have enough star glitter to lock her in, or to buy Kayakon. Which one are you realistically picking? Unless you absolutely adore Kaya or something, or hate Arlecchino, I think 99% of people are picking Arla in that scenario. You've got to consider the emotional factor here. Another thing that I don't really like about this is that it goes against the spirit of play who you like. Yes, these three characters are not the best, but they are at least competent and serviceable enough to the point where some people may want to use them out of personal enjoyment. Things are made significantly harder for starter character mains for no good reason, and characters like Amber feel borderline unplayable as a DPS without a good number of constellations. Plus, Imaginarium Theater. You need so many characters for that game mode, so why not encourage building more characters, including the free starter cast? Isn't the whole point of Theater to encourage building characters that you would otherwise have ignored because they aren't strictly best in slot? Limiting the first 3 starter 4-star characters is so weird to me, because there truly is no reason to do so. I think it might be part and due to the fact that Hoyo was afraid. Like, think about it. The Kaching banner sold horribly, and Hoyoverse most likely considers her a legacy character or something of the sort, no? But I think what Hoyo fails to understand is that there's a big difference between having to spend a limited amount of pulls for a character that you could literally lose to later on, compared to getting 4-star constellations passively when you're focusing on trying to get your target 5-star. I feel like people would give these 3 a whole lot more attention if their constellations became more available. A simple solution to all of this: the Chronicled Wish banner. It gives that banner another purpose, aside from acquiring older, outdated, limited 5-star characters, getting the rarer 5-star weapons that belong to standards, and pulling for specific standards. It'd also be a place to aim for maxing out all those 4-stars. This way, much like those who tried pulling for Eula, Cleo, or Albedo, people who are truly dedicated to the 3 starter characters can get their copies in a focus setting. But in order to make this work, you should only be able to get the 3 starter characters when wishing for 4-star characters on the Chronicled Wish. The ideal solution is simply putting them out on limited banners, honestly, and I feel like a banner of Kaya on it would make a lot of money simply because of the novelty of it. If not, then it'd at least drive a few more sales. But if an alternate solution is the only way, then I believe the Chronicled Wish banner with a dedicated method of charting course for the specific 4-stars you want is the way to go. People do care about these characters. Kaya has his fans the same way that characters such as Rosaria and Chongyun have their fans, and the same goes for the rest of the starter characters. Because Kachina is constellationable on limited banners, I see no good reason as to why they should be so ravenously gatekept. I'm not even making this video because I truly care about the 3 starters. I honestly don't care about them that much. I simply realized the strangeness of it all, and the lack of logic irks me beyond belief. Though you can all share your thoughts down below in the comments, whether you agree, disagree, or if you have any of your own ideas as to how Hoyo could implement a more friendly way of getting constellations for Kaya, Lisa, and Amber. Hopefully this video was able to tell you about the big problem with the free starter characters. This has been Juice, signing out, and Amber in her latest birthday mail mentions giving Baron Bunny a cool costume, however we are yet to see it. Where is it, Amber? Don't gatekeep this from us too. I wanna see it.